hello, and welcome back to the House of Hammer. How lovely to see you all again. We missed you. Where have you been? Oh, you shouldn't have. You really don't have to bring gifts. No. I'll take it. I was just being humble. My word, what a tour we have taken so far. We've had sea shanties, singing, dance routines. Why am I doing this show again? Oh yes, for when things turn killy. That's what keeps me coming back. And your lovely selves, of course. So, without further ado, let us move on to our sixth room. This is our largest room of the show so far. 3 films, all in one go. Don't say we don't spoil you, Ambassador.
Oh, I would never say such a thing. No.
We begin with Dick Barton, Special Agent. But you hold on to those cinematic horses for just 1 second. I think it's our duty to inform you just who Dick Barton is. And the honour of doing so falls to our resident private dick, Mr. Ben Taylorson.
Who is Dick Barton? I'll tell you who he is. He's a crime-fighting ex-commando, and with his faithful sidekicks Snowy White and Jock Anderson, he emerged on the radio in post-war Britain where real-life crime was flourishing. Owing to the austerity conditions of the post-war years resulting in a scarcity of consumer goods, the growth of the black market led in turn to a growth in violent crime. This, combined with the legacy of the war and the uneasy international alliances formed thereafter, produced circumstances where a fictional agent could find himself embroiled in everything from petty smuggling to worldwide takeover attempts. The show had our hero effectively lurch from crisis to crisis and cliffhanger to cliffhanger, always somehow managing to escape and save the day. Just when you thought it was curtains for our hero, and the villain finally had him, with one bound, Dick was free, and off he'd go again. Fast-paced and tongue-in-cheek, the show was a monumental hit, albeit, unfortunately, for a relatively short-lived period of time. Dick Barton's Special Agent formed part of the BBC's post-war Light programme. The Light programme had directly replaced the Forces programme, something which, during the war, had provided undemanding light entertainment to help maintain the morale of the troops. However, it had proved popular with civilian listeners too, and with the war now over, there was a thirst for more of the easygoing programming that the public had gotten used to. Other than for news bulletins, the concept of fixed-point programming was relatively new, by which I mean the same programs in the same time slots every day. But this was adopted in the 1940s as a means of creating regular listening habits and thus promoting audience loyalty. As part of this timetabled entertainment, Dick Barton's Special Agent would get its own 15-minute slot, originally at 6:45 every weekday evening. Actor Noel Johnson was signed up to play Barton on the understanding that he could not voice any other radio characters at the time, as the production team regarded it of great importance that our hero's voice should not be heard in any other production, and the fee should commensurate this restriction. That fee was 18 guineas per week, and despite the fact that an understanding had been reached about this stipulation, it seems Johnson was not happy about it. As the popularity of the character grew exponentially in the following months and years, Johnson's pay did not. Dick Barton would latterly be played by other actors, but it will always be Johnson who is most associated with the role on the radio. Dick Barton's Special Agent ran from September 1946 until October 1951. In total, some 711 episodes were recorded, and it had a peak audience of 15 million people. However, there was an ever-present concern from within the BBC regarding populism versus culture. In short, the lowbrow nature of the serial sat uneasily with the traditionalists within the corporation, who drew negative comparisons with American entertainment and felt that the BBC should be aiming for higher things. In addition to this, as the series' popularity grew, so did the complaints about the supposed high levels of violence and its unsuitability for the large number of juvenile listeners it attracted. The schoolboy following came to be known as the Barton Boys. Dick Barton was given his own code of conduct, providing strict guidance on how his character was written and what he could and couldn't do. No womanizing, no brutish behaviour, and perhaps the most well-known, that violence should stop at a short, clean, straightforward sock to the jaw. But the complaints continued, as Barton increasingly became the whipping boy for the pearl clutchers who had convinced themselves there was a direct correlation between Barton's popularity and real-life juvenile crime. In the end, Barton's radio adventures ceased when it was replaced in the schedules by The Archers, a radio serial initially conceived as a means of disseminating information to farmers and smallholders, which has gone on to become the world's longest-running drama. In addition to the 3 big-screen adaptations we'll be discussing in this episode, there were comic books, novels, short stories, a short-lived TV version first screened in 1979 on ITV, and even a number of stage musicals. Of course, we'll be sending Smokey to review those at some point. Despite the radio show being brought to an abrupt end and replaced by talk of crop quotas and cows' backsides, Dick Barton retains a following to this day. Which just goes to show that no villains, be they master criminals hell-bent on global annihilation, or just moralistic killjoys whining incessantly to the BBC, can ever truly keep Dick Barton down.
And thank you, Ben, for that revealing and compelling look at the history of Dick Barton. Now, let's delve into the meaty goodness that is Dick Barton, Special Agent, with our first roundtable of the night, with myself, Ben, and Kev Moore.
Okay, Dick Barton, Special Agent from 1948. Dick, Snowy and Jock are on a secret assignment to discover what's going on in Echo Bay with some suspicious Swedes, Colorado beetles, and funny fish merchants.
That's a good synopsis.
It pretty much encapsulates everything. So, our thoughts on Dick Barton's Special Agent then?
It's a juddering start to the Dick Barton franchise, I think it's fair to say.
I think that's very fair to say. As I told you guys, I read a review online, and because obviously this was based on radio plays, and someone had mentioned that the filming of this was just like someone had made a radio play and just stuck a camera in front of it, and all that was missing was a guy using a wobble board to create the sound effects. It's not too far off, is it?
No, I mean to the point where, foreign accents depict the villains, so we can even pick them out on radio. Should we still be listening by that, which we're not by this point. I will kick off though with a positive, which may be few and far between. Is that what I really enjoyed about this is the inclusion of the schoolboy character, because obviously Dick Barton was a big he was a big hero for schoolboys in the 40s in the Barton Boys, and the fact that they wrote into the script a schoolboy who gets embroiled in the action, I just think that's a little touch of genius for the filmmakers to get their core audience on side.
It's very meta, definitely. When the kid meets him with his comic and...
as you say, Kevin, especially the fact that he's got in his hands a Dick Barton comic when he meets Dick Barton. It's almost too meta. It's almost a bit Last Action Hero for me. The fact that what's happening on the pages of his comic is being depicted in front of us on the screen. But yes, I'll give it a buy.
It always smacks of Spaceballs to me, where they've got the video and the fast forward to the end just to see what happens.
I mean, to be honest, I could go with it because it's not the fact it's not the fact that what is literally happening in front of him is being depicted in the comic book until a scene where our young sidekick needs to find an escape from a room, and he literally opens the comic book and sees that there's a trap door beneath the room in the comic, and there quite literally is a trap door under a suitcase or something beneath the room that he's in. And at that point, I just thought, yeah, okay, I got it. I didn't need it spelled out to me in broad Technicolor.
Snub, who is the young boy in question, is kind of a precursor to the teen slashers of the 80s, because in the teen slashers of the 80s, you had 30-year-old women playing schoolgirls, and Snub at the time was 19.
Oh, right, okay. Well, he doesn't look it, to be fair.
No, he really does. He looks about 13, to be fair.
Yeah.
True, yeah.
Well, he's tiny, and he's very willow-limbed, he look, he plays the part of a child really well.
Well, that's what you get when you've got a job as a pit pony. You can only be so high.
He is, I would say, he is one of the more memorable sidekicks, because for all Snowy and Jock are meant to be the ones who are lifted, sort of from the Dick Barton canon.
Yeah,
They're both despite their comic pratfalls, which, I mean, we can talk about the tone in a separate conversation, which is, the tone is not good. But despite their comic pratfalls and their abundant appearance on the screen, they're not particularly memorable characters.
I mean, this is something we should go through, isn't it? I mean, for the uninitiated, which I was before we watched any of these, about Dick Barton and about Jock and about Snowy. So obviously, Dick Barton is a special agent working for the British government. Is he? Well, kinda, sorta. I mean, he's kind of like a British government version of Sherlock Holmes, really, isn't he?
Or more like Austin Powers.
Well, yeah. It's not dissimilar, really. But also, and then so you have his helpers, his sidekicks, whatever you want to call them, of Jock and Snowy. Jock is just a cataclysm of ineptitude, and Snowy isn't too far behind, but he has the redeeming feature of just wanting to drink all the time.
Jock has fallen off the packet of a set of shortbread. Really, he's the. I mean, he's
the Quaker Oats man.
He's Scottish to the point of being offensive about it.
Yeah,
with his bagpipes and his accent, and his inability to think outside of the stereotype. It's it's no wonder the character was jettisoned for the next two films.
I actually think that was a very good idea. Because it was a character that really didn't work in this film at all.
The thing is, you've got 60 minutes or 70 minutes to get a film across, and you've got too much of a cast going on at the same time as it is. Yeah. It's very much a case of Batman Forever, where you got all the bad guys all in a line, all vying for space in the film.
Yeah, I mean, within a plot that, for the first, let's just take a step back. I mean, the listener will have heard by this point about Dick Barton, and this is the point where in sort of the history of the character where he was about as famous and as well received and as widespread as he's going to be. Then he transitions over to this film. What a bizarre plot to choose for his big string outing. So we have things being smuggled in literally inside lobsters.
Yep.
And included in that is a weird little canister that we don't find out right until the very end of the film is actually a plot for reasons never revealed but alluded to being something to do with Nazis, but we're not allowed to say that.
Just reasons.
Just reasons. Foreign baddie reasons. That they're going to poison the British water supply using cholera.
I'm sorry, foreign baddie reasons is my new favourite.
that I honestly think that sums this up quite well.
It really does.
It's probably on their script notes.
It's on the back of the Blu-ray when it comes out. They're going to poison the British water supply. We don't know why. We don't want to know why. All we know is that Dick Barton is probably going to prevent it.
I love how genius this plan is because they've obviously figured out a way that they can make water work different to how water works.
Yeah.
Pretty sure you can't just localize it to Britain's waters.
No, that's not how it works at all. Yeah. So, but it was cholera, wasn't it?
Yep.
That they were trying to release.
Yes.
So, as you say, they're trying to release it into the water supply.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. That's a dastardly plan. Wonderful. But they also decide that the best way to kill Dick Barton is put it down his top.
Yeah. Dude, that's the best thing about cholera. The best thing about cholera is you can use it in a lot of different ways.
I'm sorry. Let's just rewind. You've actually got a positive for cholera.
No, well, it's susceptible. Can be used, switched up. Lots of different approaches.
Ben Taylorson, the best thing about cholera is...
Yeah.
Read his new Guardian column every week.
But the worst thing is, though, it can be incinerated, as we find out. All you have to do is hoy a cholera tube in the fire, and it's not going to kill 10,000 Northumbrians anymore by poisoning the Durham Reservoir.
What a pity.
Well, you say throwing it down his top. At one point, it looks like he's going to throw it down his suit of armour.
Yeah.
Let's Kev say some more about that scene, because I think the listener needs to know more about that.
Yeah, that scene is fantastic because that is insane. You just think about the logistics. First off, we must talk about the very, very tall Swede. Is he supposed to be Swedish?
Well, I was going to mention this. Is that Ben said about the the transition from a a radio play onto TV, and we know that they're villains because they have foreign accents.
Yes.
Which is very, very handy because one of the villains is so tall that you can't see his face in the screen.
Big tall foreigner.
So you can see he's cut off from the chin. But we know he's bad because we can hear his voice. There is a scene where they actually make him sit down to talk because then you can see his face.
It's the only way you can get him in frame. Get him sat on his knees or something. And you're fine.
Wonderful.
He's one of a cacophony of bad guys who are both memorable and forgettable in equal measure. And a little sort of an aside for the assassin that they have.
The funny fish merchants.
He proclaims, yes, one of the, again, I don't want to go overboard about this, about the fact the plot makes absolutely no sense, but quite why a bunch of supposed sort of, they're not even fishermen, they're meant to be like scientists or a scientist in charge of some fishermen.
Dressed as boat captains?
Yeah, dressed as Admiralty. Anyway, one of his henchmen, who is supposedly like a crackpot assassin who never misses, we see miss at least twice, if not several times. Once with a gun and once with a poison dart in a pub. Now again, I'm not Eric Bristow, but you know, from 6 foot out, if I'm hoying literally a pub dart into a man's head, and he manages to protect himself with, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like a cheese board, then, you know, they're not really the most notorious of villains I've ever happened across on the cinematic screen.
Everyone loves a dart to the head, Ben.
Don't they just?
Yeah. But actually, something you mentioned there, Kev, the tone of this film.
Yeah.
My word.
Oh, good grief.
What is it? Is it a wholesome story? Is it a spy story? Is it, I don't know, is it an espionage drama with moments of humour? Or is it just a mishmash that doesn't know what it wants to be?
Well, it's only till about halfway through the film that you discover that this is actually a plan. All this outing to Echo Bay is told in a flashback by Dick, where Dick goes to the Ministry of something. The Ministry of Super Spying. And they say, Dick, you need to go and find out what's going on with these fishy lobsters and these funny foreigners. And, you know, and until then, it looks like they're just on a Jolly Boys holiday, along with the two women that are just in tow for no reason whatsoever. And one of them's the psychic house cleaner. What?
I mean, there is a very odd relationship going on at the heart of the Dick Barton franchise at this point, because Dick arrives with his two mates, so I've already mentioned those, but then he appears to also live with a housekeeper called Betsy and a younger woman called Jean, is it? And they're all very chummy, but it's alluded to that Dick and Jean might be more than just friends. But it's all a bit U certificate for my liking. It's all just weird.
Well, I mean, we'll come to this more in the second and third film, is that Dick Barton does seem to do rather well with the ladies, but he also...
On a platonic.
Yeah, he does come across as quite asexual.
Because he's not allowed to. I mean, I think going back...
No, I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that Sherlock Holmes basically had his pacifism to deal with, but Dick Barton has his asexuality to deal with.
Which is, I mean, going back to what Kev was saying, and what you were asking, Kev, is sort. No, it's okay. It's and I don't know why they've done this, but it's a hangover from the BBC series. In the, you know, that the rules that I mentioned in the bit that the listeners will have now heard. They've transposed these into the films, and you just think, well, why? Why?
There's no need.
And what we'll go on to see in the next two films is that it almost is like they shake free of the shackles of, we don't need to regard Dick Barton as you say, someone who can't be attracted to women. We don't need to shake him free of someone who can't have a proper fight, or can't bleed, or can't say what he thinks. And all of these things, this film just hangs in a sort of frozen kind of, we don't quite know what to do with this character. Although we know people want to see him on the big screen, we don't quite know how to depict it.
Yeah, Dick Barton ain't got time to bleed.
He's not allowed to. Dick Barton ain't allowed to bleed.
It's strange as well, because at this point we already know that Hammer aren't really that worried about censorship because they've already run into problems with the BBFC and found a way of circumventing it, even if it is by having the worst actor in the history of acting playing himself.
How could we forget?
Exactly. So they do have a long history with the BBFC, so they know all the ins and outs of what they can get away with. So it seems strange that they went for this weird clinical Saturday morning soap kind of look.
Especially in his first outing as well. You want to make an impact, don't you, as well? And that's a shame.
They seem terrified of doing that.
They do. But that, precisely. Yeah. I mean, actually, that's a perfect way of putting it, in that they're reaching sort of the edge of the metaphorical cliff to go into, unknown territory, if you will, and then they just step back from jumping over the precipice. Which is a pity. I do want to apologise again, I interrupted you, Kev. You were going to tell us about the suit of armour scene.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that.
Sorry, that was 10 minutes ago. I'm sorry.
The suit of armour scene. Yeah. The suit of armour scene is fantastic because for some unknown reason, Dick Barton is captured by the foreigners. I don't know what they are. French,
Swedes,
Welsh,
German,
we're not sure.
Swedes, German, Norwegian. Yeah.
Don't know. And what do you do when you capture somebody? You put him in a suit of armour. Now, it's going to take you 4 squires to get a chap into a suit of armour. So, how did they do that so quick? And with one, and why?
Yeah, why, Kev, is the question
Why is
all
the
England
better
asked.
question?
It seems to be the overrunning question for most of this film.
And then tie him to a wall.
They're mariners, all right? So let's just say... No, they're mariners.
All the knots.
So let's just say that, for the sake of argument, you strap a man into a suit of armour, you chuck him in the sea, he sinks, he drowns. Yeah. There's logic in that.
Great. Do that, he dies. Yep. Great.
You strap him in a suit of armour, then you tie him to the wall?
Yeah.
There's not seeing
that
logic.
Massive question mark, isn't it?
Although I do like the way that Dick escapes from this, because it's very...
dangerous?
Yes, that's stupid. And ingenious at the same time. I like it. It's daring. It's daring Dick Barton, who can leap from anything in one bound, except he never seems to leap from anything in one bound.
No, he literally, to escape from his suit of armour tied to the wall predicament, he literally acids himself out of danger. Yes. Mm-hmm. He pours acid on himself until he melts his ropes. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a high-risk strategy I'm going to throw in there.
Yes, it really is. So, when it comes to the first Dick Barton, the first part of the saga, shall we say, what did we think overall? I mean, good, bad, indifferent?
Entertaining. Once you get used to the fact that it's a kind of half-hearted comedy for most of the part, and sometimes it's got some secret agenting things going on, or special agents, then...
special.
Yeah. Then it becomes quite enjoyable. It's a strange sort of split down the middle, and it only really becomes Dick Barton's special agent, if you like, towards the last 10 minutes or so.
Oh, with a fist fight?
Yep. Oh, well, we're not talking about that yet. He's a punchy boy.
I think we've got 2 more films to talk about that, Kev.
Oh boy. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
Fair enough. I mean, it's, as you say, it's entertaining, but it's not something I'd rush back to very quickly. This one, at least. We'll come on to the other 2, obviously.
Yeah. Just a quick note. Did you spot that all the location shoots are shot on silent film?
No, I didn't. No.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're dubbed.
Yeah. So
which is very obvious in the first 10 minutes when he's talking to one of the villains is talking to a young girl in a pushchair, and it's almost criminally bad.
Do you know, I hadn't properly realised that.
Yeah, the reason for this was to make it as cheap as possible.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
We all love a bargain.
Don't we just?
Well, with it being a quota quickie, they have a standard price of £25,000, and because they were doing this on the cheap, they managed to do it for $20,000, which means that on the day of release, they were already £5,000 in profit.
That's how you do it.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Can
it? Come under budget, and then you're already in the pink, are you? Yeah, that's awesome.
What I would say, as I sum up my review, is that it felt every pound £5,000 under budget, though. Because it just felt cheap. It felt it didn't work tonally. It felt as though if Dick Barton hadn't been a radio phenomenon, there would be no more Dick Barton films after this. They, as you said, they really struggled on the tone. But as we're about to say, I'm very pleased that they made more films.
I mean, yeah. I agree. I mean, the only way I can look at it is that it's an hour-long film. So this is a B movie. And if you put it before a kid's proper, produced film, and the kids who are into, as you say, the Barton boys who are into it, they're going to love it. You know, he wins in the end. He defeats the Nazis. He beats people up. That's great. You're going to get the kids loving it. But for us, it's not very good because, it's all over the place and it's a total mess and they don't know what they're doing. But as Ben alluded to right there, it really does go up.
Dear. So, not the greatest start for our eponymous hero, but it has to get better, surely. Before our second stop with Dick Barton Strikes Back, wouldn't it be interesting to know where Dick sits amongst some of the other radio detectives through the ages? Never fear, because with one bound, Adam Roach is free to tell us all about it, and he has privately apologised for this segment for being too long.
Hello! We all love to be told a good yarn, especially when there's some kind of central mystery to solve, and nothing stimulates the mind like following along as a sleuth pieces together the clues that were all given and somehow comes up with a solution that only they seem to be able to have seen among the weeds. Radio and detective stories are a match made in heaven. During the golden age of radio, avid mystery-loving listeners tuned in the world over to hear their favourite detectives sniffing out clues and cracking cases. For years, audiences had thrilled to mysteries in books and magazines. Now, these larger-than-life characters and the crimes they solved could be delivered at regular weekly slots to the comfort of their living rooms through the old wireless. The art of old-time radio only enhanced the way these tales could be enjoyed. Paramystery with atmospheric music, talented gallery of voice actors, and realistic sound effects, and crime fiction was suddenly more alive than ever. In fact, in this contributor's humble opinion, radio detective stories are actually even more enjoyable than screen detective stories for the simple reason that half of the storytelling is performed by my own imagination. I could sit here and give you a blah 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 history of radio detectives, but quite honestly, it would require far longer than the 5 to 10 minutes I have at hand, and eventually would end up as a swift laundry list of names that proves quite unmemorable. What I'll do instead is give you my personal top 10 detectives from the golden age of radio. At number 10, Blackstone, the Magic Detective. What's the greatest thing in the world? Yes, crisps. But after that, it's magic. Then it's ABBA. Then it's Marmite. Love is like 9th or something. Anyway, what's great about Blackstone, the Magic Detective, is that in each 15-minute episode, you got a brief little mystery, then a minute or two to solve it for yourselves, while Blackstone, played by Ed Jerome, did a magic trick and then explained to you how it was performed.
The Magic Detective, starring the world's greatest magician, Blackstone. He tells you the inside story of the Midway robberies. And right after the story, Blackstone will explain tricks that you yourself can perform. Reveal the guarded secrets of the world's greatest living magician.
So basically, it was a mystery followed by a magic lesson in 15 minutes. Unfortunately, it didn't run for that long, just 2 years from 1948 to 1950. But if you can, I highly recommend seeking them out. Great fun. At number 9, the man of the hour himself, Dick Barton. What I love about the Dick Barton adventures is that they were designed specifically for radio and aired every single weekday evening at 6:45 p.m. on BBC Radio's famous Light programme. If you couldn't manage to rush home in time to hear Dick's latest adventures, then never fear, because on Saturday mornings from 11 a.m. you could catch an omnibus edition and get yourself back up to speed.
Dick Barton, with an old wartime colleague, Snowy White, is on holiday at Granbley, a small village on the Devonshire coast.
Very much in the vein of those infamous Rocket Man serials you used to get at cinemas or on Channel 4 during the school holidays, each episode of Dick Barton would usually end with our hero in some impossible predicament, such as dangling over a volcano or being washed over the precipice of a waterfall, or trying to explain the offside rule.
Hunter, when I used it an hour ago, I shan't be long. Oh, great heavens! Look, Barton. There's no flaw in it.
Listeners rushed to their sets the following day to hear how Dick would get out of the mess, and almost every single time, the show would open with the now infamous phrase, "With one bound, Dick was free!" Coupled with its very famous theme tune, Devil's Gallop, Dick Barton became a firm fixture in British entertainment until it was eventually replaced on radio by the also thrilling adventures of the Archers. At number 8, who knows? The Shadow knows.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows.
The Shadow was the epitome of pulp detective fiction. He first appeared in 1930 as the mysterious narrator of the Detective Mystery Hour radio show, Catchy, which was a show specifically designed to boost the flagging sales of the detective story magazine, Catchy too. Not surprised. A weekly publication featuring collections of new and old mystery fiction. In fact, the radio series had quite an unexpected effect. Audiences were less bothered by the actual detective stories being presented, and far more interested in the sinister master of ceremonies, the Shadow. Instead of buying Detective Story magazine, the public began inquiring about the Shadow himself, and a year later, author and magician Walter P. Gibson began creating Shadow tales twice a month, kicking off with 1931's The Living Shadow. Throughout the 1930s, the Shadow remained a fixture on radio, gaining his own radio show in 1937, where he was played by a young Orson Welles, before also being adapted for movies. In 1994, he enjoyed a comeback of sorts when Alec Baldwin played him in The Shadow, often cited as the greatest superhero movie ever made. That's true, that is. You can look that one up. Where, you say? Over there. Shh. Anyway, at number 7, Boston Blackie, the jewel thief and safecracker turned sleuth, who had his own radio series from 1944 to 1950. Boston Blackie was unpredictable. Sometimes he could wisecrack his way out of a situation, sometimes he'd pull a gun and start blasting folks. The mysteries were dynamic and often puzzling, but always satisfying.
Rinso, R-I-N-S-O, Soapy Rich Rinso presents Boston Blackie, starring Chester Morris.
His appeal stretched to not just radio and literature, but to movies, where he was famously played by Chester Morris. His tagline was, "Enemy to those who make him an enemy, friend to those who have no friends." Not the snappiest slogan, is it? Thank goodness the mysteries are good. At number 6, a short-lived but rather fascinating radio series featuring Agatha Christie's finest, Hercule Poirot, which took its bow on American Airways from 1945 and starred Harold Huber as the little Belgian in a series of adventures mainly taking place in America so as to appeal to the market there.
From the thrill-packed pages of Agatha Christie's unforgettable stories of corpses, clues, and crime, Mutual now brings you, complete with bowler hat and brave mustache, your favorite detective, Hercule Poirot, starring Harold Huber in The Case of the Careless Victim.
More Poirot is always a joy for me, and while these episodes don't hit the heights of Christie's ingenuity in terms of puzzles to solve, they are a neat continuation of the character's legend and remarkably well produced. And in case you're wondering if it was some cheap cash-in, Agatha Christie herself personally signed off on the project, approving the first handful of scripts and even appearing on the very first episode to give her blessing to Poirot and his radio adventures.
I feel that this is an occasion that would have appealed to Hercule Poirot. He would have done justice to the inauguration of this radio program, and he might even have made it seem something of an international event. However, as he is heavily engaged on an investigation, about which you will hear in due course, I must, as one of his oldest friends, deputize for him.
At number 5, the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator. Yes, yours truly, Johnny Dollar, one of radio's most enduring and prolific detectives. Each episode opened with Johnny Dollar recounting the items on his expense account, mainly odd costs designed to intrigue the listener before he retells in conversational style the events that had caused him to spend in such a way. Johnny was an ace insurance investigator who solved the crimes that the police may have overlooked, such as suspicious deaths or fanciful robberies. In one memorable escapade entitled The Price of Fame Matter, Vincent Price turns up as himself to help Johnny solve the mysterious case of a stolen painting.
You like this one? It's called Fright and was painted by Kenneth McManus.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Like all the rest of them.
Thanks. How about this one, here at the end?
Night Wind by, I'm sorry, Vincent, I can't make out that name. You don't have this one lighted like the rest.
No, that's to maintain its somber mood, Johnny.
Oh.
And that's what made it possible for the substitution of this copy to go undetected.
So influential and popular was yours truly, Johnny Dollar, that the date of its final episode, September 30th, 1962, also the very same night that the final ever episode of classic radio series Suspense was aired, is now widely cited as the exact date upon which the golden age of radio ended. At number 4, a controversial choice, but this is my list, Philo Vance, who in books and on the screen, in the guise of William Powell, was a foppish dandy who solved the most baffling of society crimes while very much enjoying the privileged life of a bon vivant. To many, Vance was a character you loved or you hated. Such was his supercilious nature. In fact, the poet Ogden Nash famously rhymed, Philo Vance needs a kick in the pants. Raymond Chandler called him the most asinine character in detective fiction. However, in 1945, producers brought Philo Vance to the radio and all but did away with the peculiarities of his character that people loathed, turning him into a more regular type of gumshoe. This transformation worked wonders with audiences, but what really makes the Philo Vance radio series stand out is the quality of the mysteries. Each and every radio case is a baffler. A conundrum with a seemingly impossible solution, and yet each and every time when Vance tells you how the crime was committed, you slap your forehead and marvel at how you failed to work it out for yourself. In one particularly memorable case, the city is beset by a gang of criminals who have the uncanny superpower of being able to disappear into thin air. Magic must be at the root of it, you insist, but no, there is a practical, logical solution staring you in the face. It's devilishly clever stuff. And every single mystery has this marvelous, baffling quality to it.
That was enough reason for her to put an end to him.
I guess that's right. And calling you in, Mr. Vance, was enough reason to put an end to the White Willow murder case.
Number 3, long before Jessica Fletcher and Veronica Mars were doing it for the girls, Candy Matson was cracking the cases on behalf of women everywhere.
Hello, Candy Matson.
I understand you've been hired to find out who knocked off Donna Dunham.
Abrupt and right to the point. That's my business, old man who talks like a ghost.
Take care of your health, little lady.
She was the tough-as-nails private eye with a gay best friend, and remarkable for the time, was as hard-boiled as any of the men who crossed their path. Crucially, she also matched the boys at wisecracks, often showing them up as yokels when they tried to take her down with insults.
Donna Dunham is dead. Let her stay like that.
You take care of your Q's and I'll shell my P's, understood?
Not quite. Listen to this.
Oh, goody. Bullets now delivered by phone. Thanks for the slug. I'll have it identified later.
Maybe you'll be identified later. Remember what I said, Candy Matson. Forget about Donna Dunham.
Unfortunately, only 14 of her 92 episodes have survived to this day, but they do give a remarkable sample of a character that was light years ahead of her time. At number 2, a true curio of radio, one of the most mind-boggling concepts ever realized. A detective show starring Basil Rathbone as himself.
Hello there, this is Basil Rathbone. I'm so glad you can be with Fatima and me tonight. She helps me solve an uncanny tale that began when a poisoned drink was poured and reached its climax when a dead man came to life.
Yes, you heard me. Basil Rathbone plays Basil Rathbone, the actor, the Hollywood actor. Except that between performances and roles, he goes off and solves crimes. The show was called Tales of Fatima, so named because it was sponsored by Fatima cigarettes, and each week, Basil Rathbone would find himself drawn into some intrigue, from murder to robberies, and always come out on top, even romancing a few ladies from time to time.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Rathbone. This is Mrs. Dawson.
Who?
Mrs. Dawson. This is Mr. Rathbone, isn't it?
I think so.
Mr. Rathbone, I'm in terrible trouble, and I thought maybe you'd help me.
Help you in what way?
I can't tell you over the phone, but I live on Upper Lake Road. Could you come out and see me right away, please? It's a matter of life and death.
So I understand. My life or death.
Oh, no, there's no danger. But if you come, you may be able to keep someone from dying.
It's delightfully meta, and even features a clever segment in each episode where the solution to the riddle that Basil must solve is hinted at by the mystic mascot of Fatima Cigarettes before a countdown, during which time you, the listener, get to put the pieces together and solve the crime before Baz. There's truly nothing else like it. It's marvellous fun, and Rathbone is a hoot as the hyper-fop version of himself. What a good sport.
Join us again next week when we'll have another exciting tale of Fatima. Right, Mr. Rathbone?
Yes, indeed. Fatima helps to solve an amazing tale that started on a darkened street with a chase and reached its climax in a darkened room with a shot.
In the top spot, number 1, it's Basil again, this time in the company of Nigel Bruce in the detective series we all know and love him for, The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, made during his incredible screen tenure as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's legendary creation.
Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
No one could get enough of the 14 movies featuring Rathbone and Bruce as Holmes and Watson, so how delightful it is that they continued their partnership on the air, starring in 220 episodes, most of which are sadly lost these days, but they do turn up all the time. Currently, there are about 60 in existence, with newly created adventures featuring Rathbone and Bruce solving mysteries surrounding everything. Headless monks to singing spirits, from gypsy curses to voodoo dolls, from secret societies to a fiendish murder that takes place while someone is kissing the Blarney Stone.
Well, Doctor, are you all ready with tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure?
Yes, my boy, and as yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, I decided to tell you a story that took place in Ireland a few years before the turn of the century. I imagine that you've heard of kissing the Blarney Stone, haven't you?
Oh, yes, Doctor, though I've never understood exactly what it meant.
Well, let me explain it to you, because the ceremony plays a very important part in the story tonight. Blarney Castle is an imposing 15th century ruin a few miles outside the town of Cork. The castle is many stories high, and in the foremost tower, the famous Blarney Stone is situated.
What's supposed to be the point in kissing it, Doctor?
The stone is considered a powerful talisman, and the legend runs that whoever kisses it is endowed with eloquence for life.
Say, Doctor, if I ever get over to Ireland, I'll certainly kiss that stone. But you're such a storyteller yourself, Doctor. I bet you've kissed it, huh?
No, Mr. Bartell, I'm afraid I never had quite enough courage.
Courage? Well, why does it need courage, Doctor?
Well, because the Blarney Stone is set in a most inaccessible position on the outside wall. To kiss it, it is customary to lower the candidate for eloquence over the rampart, head foremost, with a friend hanging on to his heels.
From the top of a castle?
But it wasn't all New Adventures. In fact, Rathbone and Bruce played the famous pair on radio in such classic Conan Doyle adventures as The Adventure of the Sussex Vampire, The Adventure of the Copper Beeches, and even a 6-part adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles. And for those fans of Holmes' lore, a tantalizing radio adaptation was produced starring Rathbone and Bruce of that most fabled of Holmes' adventures, the giant rat of Sumatra. Although this is sadly one of the episodes that, for the moment, is still lost. They're a total joy to listen to. And for any fans of Golden Age detective fiction, further adventures with Rathbone and Bruce in the roles of Holmes and Watson are always entertaining and welcome. Radio, then, a natural fit for detective fiction and the medium in which this week's Hammer star, Dick Barton, was born. No surprise that Hammer, spying an opportunity to take a proven franchise and turn it into something special on screen, swooped in and adapted Dick Barton for cinemas. But did they succeed? Is it a case of thumb up or dick out?
Thank you, Adam. Don't know what he was talking about. That was a perfect length. Back to the round table now. Is Dick's return strong and mighty, or is it a rather more limp affair?
Dick Barton strikes back as the special agent returns. He's tougher, he's smoother. He's thankfully jettisoned that Scotsman and his bagpipes. And he's here to save Great Britain, aka the world, from the most feared weapon of all, the brain shriveler. That's right, the evil Forakada has developed a weapon that can utilize sonic vibrations as a targeted weapon that shrivels brains. And he plans to, brace yourself, use Blackpool Tower as a giant tuning fork, haven't we all? With which to superpower his weapon. Can Dick escape gas explosions, snake pits, and fairground caravans and fight his way up the tower in time to stop this evil plan and the irritating noise that accompanies it? Of course he can. He's Dick Barton, and he's striking back against tuning forks that shrivel brains. So, gentlemen, tuning forks, Blackpool Towers, give me your thoughts.
I liked the tuning fork Blackpool Tower effect. It looks like a throwback to the RKO logo.
I was just going to say, it's the RKO logo.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Again,
Yeah,
it heads right back to radio because we can't have a super weapon that doesn't make a noise because we won't be able to hear it on the radio, even though we're not on the radio.
God.
We're on the big screen now. But I do like the fact that we're keeping those radio roots.
Oh, yeah. They don't abandon their roots at all.
Can you imagine that sound coming through the radio, though? You would just think that your set was absolutely on the way out.
If it was coming through the radio, you'd think that Orson Welles had taken over again and just was trying to freak people out. Yeah. Because, dear God, I mean, we'll get to that because obviously that's right at the end of the film. But I've got to say, lads, I just right off the bat, this is brilliant.
It's cracking.
Yeah,
this is the film that half of the James Bond films want to be. It's absolutely tremendous. There's a memorable baddie. There's a ridiculous set piece in a memorable location. It's funny. I'm actually quite tense at times. Some of the violence is a bit brutal. It's tremendous. Yeah. There's no better word for it. It's tremendous.
The tone is spot on. As you just said, they get the amount of laughs right. They get the peril right. They get the threat and the salvation and the hero. Spoilers, winning, and it's just it's brilliant. I love this.
There's something else I'd like to say as well in a set piece that foreshadows almost 40 years later when Knight Rider does it. There's a scene when the baddie is escaping in his car, and like all the coppers are on the thing saying you've got to track this car's coming this way, and the car. He rides it up into the back of a lorry, and the lorry escapes, and you think, Michael Knight did that in the 80s,
Genius.
And this is the 40s. Tremendous.
Fantastic.
It is.
You mentioned the Bond films. It's worth noting that Ken Adam is the set designer on this.
He was a set designer on Bond?
Yeah, he designed the massive volcano for a start, and the Bond stage. Wow, wonderful. That's a bit of a coup.
There you go. I like it. I like the symmetry there. That's good.
Yeah.
But I mean... what is the fundamental question? What is Dick Barton striking back against?
Crime.
Oh, is that what it is?
Injustice. Everything.
But it's like he's been kicked down and now he's striking back.
I'd like to see striking back against that travesty of a first film, but we'll just.
The thing is, it was originally going to be called Dick Barton and the Death Ray, and that was actually the pre-production title, which makes a damn sight more sense.
It's a bit on the nose, though. Kev,
it's on the nose, but it works.
Yeah. And it'd look great on the posters as well. I could just see them now.
Although it does sound a bit, it sounds a bit science fiction, doesn't it? Dick Barton against the Death Ray or whatever. You know, it sounds like it should be like Moonraker. It should be on Mars or something. You know.
Well, it's in Blackpool, so it's almost there. So this film, what I would say about this film, it's a lot more violent. You know, there's guns. There's you know, one of the main characters gets shot and killed. In fact, and when we see a villain, two villains, in fact, oft in spectacular style. One hurled into a reptile house, and the other intimidated off the top of Blackpool Tower.
But to be fair, you've got Don Stannard coming at you with his hair all ruffled. So he means business. Oh, and his bloody
he's looking
shirt.
angry. He doesn't have a gun. He doesn't have a knife because he's not allowed to because the BBC have told him he can't. But he just looks angry, and you're thinking, "Oh my God, this isn't going to end well for me. I'm just going to hurl myself off Blackpool Tower down a lift shaft." I did like the scene where Dick's in hot pursuit of the villain, and he has to make his way across, and you know, sort of more contemporary listeners will know this, across Blackpool Tower Ballroom, as featured on Strictly Come Dancing.
Oh yeah.
And the ballroom is full of people dancing, and he can't just walk across it. He's got to dance across it, and I really like this. And sort of women, presumably sort of blown away by his good looks, keep appealing to him to dance, and he has to dance through the women to get to the bad guy. And I quite like that. It's something that James Bond would dream of doing, but not quite be able to pull off. I would agree.
I mean, that particular scene is a great setup, though, isn't it? I mean, he never says no. He is the consummate gentleman. He never says no to any woman who wishes to dance with him.
What a guy!
He will lead, obviously, and he will take them by the hand, and he will waltz around and then move on to the next one just to reach his bride. But he never says no. You've got to give him credit for that.
I mean, again, it feeds into him befriending women in strange relationships, because, as I say, throughout none of the three films do we ever see him really have a girlfriend as such. But in this film, he befriends a woman who turns out to be one of the baddies, kind of. And yeah, that's a little bit about her. She's a bit weird. So we find out ultimately, before spoilers, she dies because she gets shot. That she's been doing bad things, but only because her father's life had been threatened. But there's a very interesting scene where she utilizes what appears for the 1940s to be like new technology, which is a dog whistle, so high vibration whistle, and she goes out to a lake and she whistles for a dog. And blow me, if this dog doesn't appear from the lake like some kind of nuclear submarine, it just submerges and comes across.
No,
and you think, where's that dog been for the last hour?
It's the opposite of submerge. It's the other way.
It unsubmerges.
Yeah. It appears out of the water.
Well, it depends which angle you're looking at the water from.
No, it doesn't.
If you're a mermaid, it submerges.
Again, no, it doesn't. Yeah, but then it has a perfectly preserved message around its neck for her to read. And yeah, but it's great. But no, I love this, right? So as we were talking about in the first film, you know, what was it supposed to be? But this, we know what it's supposed to be. There's intrigue, there's subterfuge, there's spy stuff, and it's just wonderful. And I was, I don't know what it was, 10 minutes in, and someone had already died. There was a villain with missing fingers, and then there was just, and it was just, oh, this is cataclysmic enjoyment, and it was just sort of like, yes, let's have more of this, and it didn't stop for the whole hour. It was great.
This is where I think, now, is it Dick Barton Special Agent or is it Dick Barton Super Spy? Because the first 10 minutes is in an airport surrounded by blokes that look like spies. Everybody's got the same spy uniform on. It's just insane.
Yeah, and also the first person they think is the spy, they go, kind of, you know, with a bit more fancy language, they go, "Are you the spy?" And he goes, "No." And then they go back to him again and go, "Are you the spy?" And he goes, "Yes." It's like, hang on. Is that the way to break your secret code?
It's like Mustafa from the Austin Powers films. You have to ask him the same question 3 times before he'll tell you the truth.
The other thing, though, I'd say in spy terms is that this film, the gravitas of the villain and his plot is much bigger, whereas we're smuggling. Obviously, we never see out the cholera nonsense in the first one, but here, an entire village is supposedly wiped out by the villains' weaponry, and we see it firsthand. The tuning fork Blackpool Tower nonsense is going to wipe out parts of Lancashire, the best parts, the bits that are on the sea.
1,000 voices screamed out and were instantly silenced.
Yeah, just like Alderaan, but like near the sea with slot machines. So yeah, that almost happens. And but the other thing, that I like, that sort of to draw further parallels with James Bond, is it's the sort of unapologetic awfulness of the baddies in terms of how they treat their women. Fortunately, I'm not some stupid sentimental woman, says the baddie.
Oh, he did say that, didn't he? Yeah.
But of course, but I also like when Dick Barton refers to the baddie, and they're having a conversation, and I think he's trying to justify why he's doing what he's doing. And I think Dick Barton says to him something along the lines of course, you're quite mad," which I really like.
Phenomenal.
Can we talk about the? We mentioned it in the previous film of the suit of armor escape, and but obviously we have a doom trap in this one as well.
Yeah,
which is him and his perky assistant and whatnot are tied to chairs, and the way they get out of this is genius.
What, by shuffling to freedom?
Yeah.
There is also the scene in the first one where they shuffle to freedom, but yeah, he doesn't have to do a lot of shuffling for a secret agent. I'll give him that.
He's very athletic, and he looks like he's well practiced at this. He spends a lot of time getting tied up.
To be fair, he doesn't give up much of a fight when it comes to being.
No. It's Punchy McPunchy every other time.
Oh, but come on, the massive fist fight in this one is brilliant.
It's fantastic.
Everything about this film's brilliant.
Yes, yeah, it is. Compared to the last one as well, it's just like a quantum leap from where you were to where you are now. Like you said about the village that gets wiped out, I mean, that is a dark scene. And especially when it's for a Saturday morning sort of playhouse film, it's quite...
There's that line where, because Dick Barton walks in and the village has already been annihilated, but he says some comforting thing to someone about, they wouldn't have suffered at least. And later on, when the super weapon is being tested for the second time... we see, in fact, they did suffer. They suffered really badly.
For a very, very long time.
Yes.
Yeah, which is pretty sobering.
Yeah, the screams won't ring out for too long, honest.
Yeah. So, we need to point this out. So, the last... how long would you say, lads? How long does the tone from Blackpool Tower, how long does it last at the end of the film?
It's at least the last 12, 15 minutes. It's too long.
Oh, yeah, it's massively too long. I compared it to the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre when all you can hear is the chainsaw.
Perfect.
And in this one, thank you. And all you can hear in this is this high-pitched... it's the opposite of a brown tone.
It's the tinny-tie sort of sound.
It hits you right in the centre of the head, and... Dear God, it's painful.
Just make it stop.
My cat went wild. She was sat next to me watching this, and we think she has minor hearing difficulties as well. And by the time the tone was up to maximum, she was ready to kill me, the television, anything in the
room. Well, yeah. She was right.
She was. She really was, yeah. And the villain. She was ready to intimidate him right off the top of Blackpool Tower. So what did we think then, gentlemen? If we can sum it up, give me a few words to sum this one up.
Like you said, it's a massive step up. It's strange that we've got Snowy played by a completely different guy. We've got him, instead of being played by George Ford, he's played by the guy that played him on the radio, who is called Bruce Walker. But it's strange that nobody noticed that it was a different Snowy on this at all. So it shows how much of a foil the guy is, But yeah, belts along at a nice pace. You've got a lot of great set pieces. Yeah, it's a win.
Yeah, I can't disagree. It surprised me how much I enjoyed this. I wasn't expecting, after the first one, and then watching this, I was just sort of like, ugh. But as I said, the opening few minutes of the death, and then the working out who had done it, and then the missing fingers, and the intrigue, and it was the darkness, and it was just like, yes, this is how I want my Dick to be. You know, it just made sense. As he said, get rid of Jock. He was superfluous, wasn't needed. But then throw in the more spy elements, more intrigue, and just more passion about it, and it just worked. It worked for me. I mean, this is fantastic, and I am going to be more than happy to go back to this again because it's such a thoroughly enjoyable way of spending an hour with Dick.
I just sum it up by saying, to this point, this is my favourite Hammer film.
Wow.
Ooh.
Now you're talking. That's the Dick we all wanted to see. Outstanding stuff. Now, before we move on to our final film of the episode, we must talk about the other important factor of the music, and more specifically, the Dick Barton theme. And trust me, even if you're convinced you don't know it, you do. With more on this is our cocky, crackpot composer, Kev.
Well, the person I wanted to talk about here only did one piece of work, but still appears in all 3 of the Dick Barton films, and he didn't even get any on-screen credit for that. So I guess this is more of an aside, or a House of Hammer secret passage. I'm talking about Isaac Cozerbreet, better known as Charles Williams, the British composer, conductor and arranger, whose most identifiable work to us is The Devil's Gallop, which became the theme tune to Dick Barton. With the BBC orchestra playing at a breakneck pace, it's ironic that it's gallop with one L. So it's not even anything to do with horses. No, it goes back to the 1820s, the time of grand society balls around Vienna, Berlin and London. This very lively dance is generally thought to be the forerunner of the polka and the can-can, and many composers would write their own gallops, and personally, I think that with the speed of this particular gallop, it would go down better in a mosh pit than a ballroom. But I digress. Back to Charles Williams. Although he went to Gaumont British Films in 1933 as composer, and stayed there until 1939, he didn't then stop writing for the big screen when he became conductor of the Queen's Hall Light Orchestra and many others. He would go on to write for some 100 films in total, as well as producing a large number of light orchestral genre pieces. Indeed, his piece entitled Jealous Lover became the theme to the 1960 film The Apartment, starring Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine, 11 years after the original recording. As well as this, he would write The Young Ballerina, a piece of music that became well known in 50s Britain due to the BBC using it to accompany a potter's wheel during interludes in some weird attempt to hypnotise the population as far as I can tell. He was more than just a jobbing film composer though. He was a violinist too, playing freelance in theatre, cinema and symphony orchestra for many of the top names of the time, including Edward Elgar, all after he'd studied composition at the Royal Academy. Whether it be Covent Garden or Brixton, he was happy, and by all accounts, Williams was a real gentleman who was extremely popular with his fellow musicians. This probably explains why he was never short of people to record with him on Saturday mornings at the EMI studios in Abbey Road, on yet more uncredited mood music for the Chapel Music Library. Sadly, alcoholism was a disease that he constantly battled against during the later stages of his life, and his awareness of the problem led to him declining an honorary Doctor of Music degree offered by Oxford University. He no longer considered himself worthy of the award, nor trusted himself to attend such an important ceremony. Given his brilliant musical pedigree and influence on his many peers, this was nothing short of a personal tragedy, and his passing in 1978 went almost unnoticed as the world had moved away from light and library music and started to recognise film composers on the end credits that for decades they'd been absent from. The Devil's Gallop shows no sign of slowing down either. For anything from the Spanish Inquisition to the adventures of Sir Digby Chicken Caesar, It's the go-to piece of music for danger and daring do, and it still rocks like a mother.
Good on you, Kevy. On to our last round table now. Do we get to experience an earth-shattering climax? Or does it stutter towards the inevitable, disappointing conclusion that most middle-aged men suffer? We shall see.
So, my friends, from 1950, we go on to Dick Barton at Bay. So, Special Agent Dick Barton has been assigned to recover a kidnapped professor and deactivate a death ray before catastrophe occurs and World War III is declared. Okay, so we've gone from the ridiculous to the sublime. Where do we go from here, my friends?
Back to a film that was clearly filmed before the last one. Unfortunately, because this is bang in between, quality-wise. It's bang in between the previous two films we've talked about.
I'm blaming Snowy because if you notice, we've got the old Snowy back from the first film as well.
But thankfully not the Scotsman.
Yeah,
True,
no, Jock
yeah,
is
still
Jock.
no Jock.
Yeah, they kicked Jock out on this one. It's quite noticeable. We should point out to the listeners that this is out of sequence from what they filmed. So, Special Agent and At Bay were filmed back to back, and then Strikes Back was supposed to be the third, but then it all got mishmashed around, didn't it?
I don't understand why.
I think it's evident from the film that they're still struggling here to get the character right, to get the tone right. That they're much, I would say they've made some strides, and that that it's much closer to perhaps the optimum version of Dick Barton. But for me, the character himself in this, him as an individual, he's still very abrupt, he's very unlikable. And you can see underneath that, you can see, he's a good guy, his morals are in the right place, but a lot of the dialogue, he's very abrupt with the people he should be, sort of friendly with. And I still think the film struggles. They've lost the ridiculous comic tone, which is good, but they haven't softened down him into a likable character as they did in the previous film, which is actually the next film to be filmed. And it's really caught between the two. I like this film, but it is very much bang in between the other two.
I can't disagree. Something we need to touch on. I mean, my segment that will appear in this episode will flesh it out a little bit more. But can we talk about Don Stannard, who plays Dick Barton? We've met him once before in Death in High Heels, and he was very charming in that, and
as Charles
and saved the day and got the girl, and he already had the girl, to be perfect. Yeah, he did pretty well. But I understand where you're coming from, Ben, and saying he's the character is abrupt and not the most instantly likable person, but there's something about Don Stannard that I really, really like. I think he's incredibly charming, and he just with what he's given, he does very, very well.
Well, as I alluded to on the last film, I think it was, or it might be in the first, Don Stannard is incredibly good looking, especially at that
Handsome
particular
bloke.
time. A handsome bloke. And he looked just as demure with his hair slicked back as when it's all over the place and he's looking a bit ready for a bit of a rough and tumble with you.
For me, he's got the look. I'm not. He's got the look. I'm not arguing with that. I think my only argument is with how the character is written, and again, I don't want to harp back to what we've talked about already, but because he's not allowed to charm anyone on screen, he's not allowed to womanize, he's not allowed to do certain things, we get a very stoic, kind of professional, almost cold hero. Yes, ironically, the times we see him warm are when he's... Because this film marks the reappearance of our schoolboy chum, who reappears to be one of his sidekicks, and he talks sort of in that fatherly or maybe sort of as an uncle to him.
Like a mentor.
Yeah. And you see him more as a warmer character there, but the rest of the time he's ordering people about, he's, and again, that's no reflection on Don Stannard. It's just, it's what he's allowed to do. I agree though entirely. He looks great. The physicality, we've mentioned James Bond several times. Don Stannard could have been James Bond easily.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
He's a definite matinee idol in the making.
Yeah. And I think it's the ultimate cinematic tragedy in terms of these films that he never went on to make any more after this. So for all, I would say the character of Dick Barton in this film and how Don Stannard sort of portrays him isn't as warm as he could be. It's no reflection on the actor. It isn't.
No.
It would have been interesting to see how the next one would have been, because like I mentioned on our first episode, I said about John Gilling writing the screenplay for Dick Barton in Darkest Africa.
Yeah.
How adventurous was that an idea for him? Because so far we've only seen Dick Barton go to Blackpool, and in this it's Dick Barton goes to a lighthouse.
Yeah, well, which is virtually the same thing, really.
Yeah, it's pretty much. In fact, there's a nautical thing in the first one as well. So Dick Barton just hangs around boats a lot by the looks of it.
Likes the sea.
He does. It must be the chip shops.
Well, he was a swimmer, Don Stannard, remember? He was almost an Olympic swimmer, so maybe that's why he insisted on sea in every picture. Maybe that was his rider. I ain't acting in nothing where the sea isn't pictured.
I think if hits it on the nail there, it sort of says that he was born to be a matinee idol, and unfortunately because of the tragedy that occurred, which people will hear about, it's just a damn shame, because he had a future, and he had I think a very bright and prosperous future. You can tell, though, that he's struggling a little bit. He's very upright all the time. He has the hands on the hips a lot.
Yeah.
And he's being very forthright with what he is saying. There's not a lot of interpretation to what he says. But as you say, Ben, it's the script, isn't it?
Well, the way, and possibly the way in which he's being directed. I mean, let's go back to the character of Dick Barton. I mean, here's a superhero or special agent. Gordon Bennett, does he not get punched in the face a lot? For someone who's supposed to be the good guy. We've talked about some of the fist fights earlier on, but Gordon Bennett, every fist fight seems to sort of involve them just repeatedly punching each other into the face until one person falls down. There's nothing ingenious in their fighting technique. There's no sort of, I've studied, sort of martial arts or whatever. It's just, I'm just going to repeatedly windmill you until you drop.
It's like a mosh pit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's one bloke in this in the big. Of course, again, we have to have a big punch up at the end. There's one bloke in this who just hits a banister. He doesn't get punched. He hits a banister and passes out. And it was just sort of like, he doesn't even need to get punched.
It's the excitement.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So the death ray. Can we talk about the death ray?
Do we have to?
So it basically shoots down airplanes, doesn't it?
Model airplanes.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by the way, are in the same room as them.
Yes.
Which, the other thing, hang on, what if this death ray goes through that model airplane? Isn't it just going to take out our ceiling?
That's a good point. I mean, they've not really thought about the logistics. Does this death ray bounce back at all?
No, I mean, they do one test in a room where literally an Airfix model is dragged along the room on a fishing wire, and they shoot it down using this invisible death ray machine, and that's enough for like the entire British government to decide, yes, that's brilliant, we could use that on a proper aeroplane. No more tests are required whatsoever. And I like that kind of confidence. I'm not going to lie. There should be more of that in the military. One test on an Airfix model, and that's all it takes. Yes, let's put that into full production. That's absolutely fantastic. Our tanks would definitely wipe out that Panzer tank over there because we've tried it on my dining room table. I like that. Honestly, I like that. I really like that kind of confidence.
So, I'll tell you what, let's wrap this up a little bit, gentlemen. So, initially, your first thoughts on Dig Barton at Bay, and then we'll go through the entire trilogy as a whole. So, Kev, do you want to give us your thoughts on Dig Barton at Bay?
I feel like it should have been called Dick Barton at the Bay for a start.
Yeah.
That would have made more sense. Patrick McNee.
Oh, yeah.
Never mentioned him.
And you're the Avengers man.
I love the Avengers, and it was a really weird little treat seeing him as the most inept special agent ever, who, when running through a darkened alley, decides to hide in a highly visible and highly lit phone box to which he can be easily killed by the pursuers.
He is easily killed.
Yes. So there was Patrick McNee. All in all, it's a good romp. You've got a lot of stock footage use as well, which seems to be the done thing. You've got a lot of people looking up at planes that aren't there. It's a good fun romp. It's nowhere near Strikes Back. It's nowhere near that standard, but it's an interesting watch, and it's enjoyable enough. It doesn't outstay its welcome at 68 minutes, so I'm fine with it.
Fair enough. Ben?
I've got a few questions about this particular film.
Okay.
One would be to do, questions perhaps for the filmmakers, not for yourselves, gentlemen.
Because I don't think we could answer them.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is not a strong suit.
There's a scene where our hero fakes his own death so as to not be seen by the villains, only then to stroll around in front of them. It's the best way I can kind of put it, as it doesn't really bode well as a secret hero technique. And also, what I would say is that if I'm ever trapped in the basement of a lighthouse, and I will also hope that it has industrial scale fireworks with which I can use to break out of the basement, because they find a rocket that is bordering on the kind of thing that is used in the Israel-Palestine conflict in the basement of a lighthouse that he uses to break out, which is tremendous viewing, but slightly unrealistic.
Or at least it's sold in Mexico.
Oh, well, yeah, it's a Tijuana toilet cracker, is what it is. But no, I've put my opinion firmly out there. This film is enjoyable, but it's far from polished. Whereas the last one was prime dick. This one is on the way.
Fair enough. Yeah, I can't disagree with either of you. This is in the middle of all the three. This is, if we're going, I don't know, hop, skip, jump. Dick Barton, Special Agent, is the hop. This is at Bay is the skip, and then Strikes Back is the jump. It's
definitely
it's easy to see. As Kev said, it's enjoyable, but that's about it. It's not brilliant. But the trilogy as a whole, I enjoyed them, and I enjoyed after all the Hammer films we've seen so far of jumping and leaping from different genres. It was nice to have some just normality and just calm, and just we were going through the same genre every time, and it was just nice to do 3 films in a row, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys agree.
No, I do agree.
Definitely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that's good. So, do we give a recommendation for Dick Barton?
Yeah, definitely.
Get stuck in.
And there you have it, a trio of dicks all nicely summed up for you. However, there is just one last stop on our tour before we hasten you out into the night. It's that time once again to inaugurate a Hammer hero. And to do that, it's the turn of our wittiest, handsomest, and most urbane of hosts. Oh, would you look at that? It's me. You really must stop writing my script for me, lads. It's Smokey, like Satan. once again, it's fallen on me to present this episode's Hammer hero. And do you know what? I honestly don't mind. These fantastically talented men and women have shaped the landscape of this wonderful journey my friends and I are traversing, and they truly deserve their moment in the sun. Before we started this show, I'd never even heard of William Hines, Enrique Carreras, or our honorary inductee Christiana Brand. However, as much credit and dignity we could lavish on the aforementioned few's many achievements and accolades, this particular hero of Hammer is an absolute honour to present. Of course, by now you will have all heard about Dick Barton, the dashing British special agent, but I really do think it's time you learn just a little bit more about its star, Don Stannard. Born in Westcliff-on-Sea, Essex in 1915, Donald Gornard Stannard was the son of a banker, and, from all reports available, was interested in acting from a very young age. His passion for the arts did eventually bear fruit, as it led him to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, where one of his first and quite prestigious assignments was as a stand-in for future Oscar winner Robert Donat. His first proper break in the industry was not too far away. During a visit to England, noted head of MGM Louis B. Mayer spotted the young Stannard and offered him a screen test. The audition was initially for a small role in the Robert Taylor and Vivien Leigh vehicle A Yank at Oxford. Unfortunately, the part for Don never materialised. A couple of uncredited roles did follow in Hold That Kiss and Bridal Suite in 1938 and 1939 respectively. Unfortunately, just as his career was starting to begin, so was something else, and that was the Second World War. Donald's dream of making it as an actor were put on hold for 5 years, as he joined the Royal Navy for services to his country. After the war was over, the dream was back on again, and he didn't have long to wait. He made his British screen debut in 1944, playing a small role in McLean Rogers' feature Don Chicago. Following this, a couple of roles came in quick succession. 1945 saw him play John Bevan in Robert Hamer's period crime melodrama Pink String and Sealing Wax, that was produced at Ealing Studios by Michael Balkan. Swiftly on the heels of this, Don donned the uniform of a Roman centurion in Gabriel Pascal's mammoth production of Caesar and Cleopatra. And now, this is where we come in. From episode number 4, his headline turn as Detective Charlesworth in Lionel Tomlinson's 1947 film Death in High Heels. It was around this time that Hammer licensed the movie rights for the character of Dick Barton. As we've already heard, this was one of the most popular radio serials in Britain at the time, and Hammer did not miss a trick in scooping it up. Noel Johnson, the original actor who voiced Dick Barton on the radio, was briefly considered for the role in the film series. However, Hammer knew what they had on their hands in Don Stannard. He was handsome, charismatic, and as mercenary as it sounds, he was also virtually unknown, and therefore very cheap to hire. As you also know by now, the 3 Dick Barton films, Special Agent, Strikes Back, and At Bay, were all released in quick succession, with varying degrees of success. The 4th film planned for the series, Dick Barton in Darkest Africa, would have been a very interesting project to see, but sadly never saw the light of day. Following the wrap party for Dick Barton Strikes Back, which was filmed 3rd, don't forget, Don Stannard, his wife, and 2 other actors, including his Strike Back co-star Sebastian Cabot, were involved in a tragically fatal car crash. Donald Gordon Stannard sadly passed due to the impact. He was just 33. Whether it was a mark of respect or not, Hammer made the decision to not recast the role and cancelled the production of the 4th Dick Barton film. As is the case with any tragedy such as this, it's easy to wonder where Don's career would have ended up. Would he have faded away like so many others? Or would he have been one of the lucky ones and seen his star continue to rise? This is just my humble opinion, but from the 4 films I've recently seen starring Mr. Stannard, I'd like to think with his natural charm and matinee idol good looks, he could and should have been a fixture, especially in British films, for many years to follow. So, I would personally like to thank Don Stannard for some wonderful moments over the last few months. And one of the finest moments, I'm sure you agree, is when Adam blindly thanked Kev and then realised he got it completely wrong.
There's no performance in any of it, apart from, of course, God, what's his name?
Don Stannard.
Don Stannard, there we go. The guy who not the lead. No, the guy that works in the shop.
For that alone, Mr. Stannard, we thank you. Isn't he magnificent? What a guy. And so that is us done for this episode. The door swings closed on room number 6 of the House of Hammer. Please check out the Dick Barton series. They are readily available and are a hell of a lot of fun. Next episode, we will be taking you to a room full of smuggled niggers, and then we will talk about a film too. Between now and then, if you fancy a snoop to see what we are up to, if you desire to be a bit of a dick yourself, you can find us on Twitter at HouseHammerPod, on Instagram at HouseHammerPod, or if you wish to get in touch by email, you can do so at scream@houseofhammerpodcast.com. Oh, and many thanks for the lovely ratings and reviews we've already received. We have seen them all, and we appreciate them more than you can know. So, that is us done for this episode, and I can tell you, we are all completely spent. Time for a cup of tea and a bit of a snooze. So, from me, Smokey.
From me, Ben Tillison.
From me, Kev Moore.
From me, Adam Roach.
And we cannot wait for you to return to us very soon at the House of Hammer.